Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to What It Takes to Make a Movie with the Dunedin International Film Festival 2021. We're looking really forward to talking to our panelists today. We have several people here, starting with Tony Armour. Tony is the film commissioner for St. Petersburg Clearwater. He's an award-winning filmmaker and founder of the internationally acclaimed Sunscreen Film Festival. He works with hundreds of productions each year. He helped write, develop, and produce the two Bernie the Dolphin films from Clearwater. He also wrote a screenplay for and is producing Can't Stop the Dawn, starring Christina Ricci, one of my favorite actors. And the film is going to be shot this year. Tony works closely with film distributors and sales agents attending markets like Cannes, Sundance, Toronto, AFM, and more. He has a deep, long-standing relationship with the film industry. He's been producing, directing, writing, and creating film, TV, corporate, and digital media content since 1997. Do want to mention that he has a business background. He graduated magna cum laude with a BA in business management from Eckerd College, and then an MFA in motion picture and television from Academy of Art University in San Francisco, California. Welcome, Tony. Thanks for being here.
That makes me sound cool or something.
Yeah, you are cool.
Yeah, I wish you would have started with me. That's a tough act to follow.
Oh no, I've got some pages on you too. I did my research. So Julie, who was just speaking, is a fellow Women in Film and Television Florida member, and Tony actually is a sponsor. Julie is a producer, director, and editor specializing in After Effects, Final Cut Pro, and Adobe Premiere. Julie was the senior producer, director, and editor at Charter Communications, formerly Bright House Networks, for 18 years. She's also the owner of Guys Only, a video production company specializing in education, fundraising, and product promotions. She loves storytelling. A couple other little things about her. She is working on a movie called Forgotten, Pulse Survivors, which is produced by Nancy McBride, past president of Women in Film and Television, and directed by Alexis Sheehan. She's also a volunteer for the Dunedin International Film Festival, and she's been doing a wonderful job. She, in addition to that, is a judge for the Telly Awards, which is after all our hearts. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
And Brian Edgar. Brian is a screenwriter, educator, and script coach. His original screenplay, 1066, is currently in development with Doran Pictures. Brian has written scripts for Al Pacino, Killer Films, and HBO. Presently, he's working on a thriller. Brian has taught screenwriting and film for over 20 years, including an adjunct professor at CUNY, Hunter College, an instructor at the Digital Film Academy, and Gotham Writers Workshop in New York. Huh, isn't that interesting? That's when I first got back into film. I went with Gotham Writers Workshop to Belize in 2001, I think it was.
You went to Belize. I wanted to go, but
yeah,
they discontinued that by the time I started. Yeah,
it was a wonderful trip, and it really spurred me on. So Brian has an MFA in film from Columbia University. That's pretty impressive, where he studied with Milos Forman. He holds Milos.
Yeah.
Okay. He holds a Shodan black belt in karate, so you better watch out because you don't know what's going to happen. We're expecting a couple other people, Curtis Graham and Rich Rodman. Rich Rodman's on set, so I'm not sure if he's going to make it tonight or not. But we're going to start out with a few questions, and we're going to go for probably about an hour or so, and then we're going to open it up for questions to everyone else. So if you have a question while one of the panelists is speaking, just send it to the chat and we'll retrieve it and answer them at the end of the conversation with the panel. So we're going to start with Tony. Tony, we have a mixed audience, I'm sure, here. So would you describe the main titles and functions of crew in a typical narrative film?
Well, there's a lot.
Well, let's make it a short film.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That's
like
well, still,
producer, director, etc.
Yeah. So, obviously, yeah. What does a producer do? What does a director do? What is that kind of thing? Well, a producer is typically, the one who, call him a business manager, the person who puts the whole project together and working with, depends on if you're a short and feature, depends on the budget of it. You might have a line producer who's basically the bean counter producer, the money producer is putting the budget together and kind of making sure everything stays on target. You can have creative producers who, really work with the creative side of it. And you've got, logistical and creative producers at the same time. The executive producer typically is the person who's just paying for the thing. And, co-producers and associate producers, and basically all the producer roles are helping with all the logistics and all the business management of making a film happen, and can have creative input as well. And then, director is the person who, their vision is what's going to end up on screen. And of course, it always starts with a great screenplay. And sometimes it's a writer director who does both, or it's a separate writer. And then you're hiring a director. It could be a wide variety of things. And then obviously, as you get down into your, below the line crew positions, gaffers, your electrician, and the grips are the guys that are moving things around and setting things up. And you've got your art department and wardrobe department and catering, and new position to 2020, the COVID supervisor, very important position to have on set nowadays. You could have a short film with 5 people or with 50 people. It just depends. And the same thing with features. If you're doing a low budget feature, you might have 15 people working with you, or you could have 100. So it's so variable depending on really your budget and the scope of what you're doing. You've got action scenes. Is it just 2 people sitting on a park bench talking? It's really going to be widely varied depending on what you're doing, on what your crew's going to be.
So quick question about the producers. It seems to me lately when I watch a film, there could be 3 or 4 different main producers and then many co-producers. Is that because of the money that it costs to make a film these days and people are having to collaborate much more?
Yeah, it depends. You might take a look at a film like The Butler. If you look at the credits of The Butler, look at the number of producers on that project. And that's because they were kind of nickel and diming that film to get all the money in. Somebody's putting $100,000 here, another person put 150, another person put $1 million. And, so they had a bazillion producers on that project because those were the people that are putting in the money. Sometimes you'll do creative things, and, let's say you've got an actor, and you're going to pay them as a producer and an actor. And so they get a producer credit, and then they get a partial fee for producing, and then they get an acting credit, and they get some of their fee for acting. The same thing, with the director can also be a producer. Sometimes if there's someone who has somehow participated in the project, they've helped out in some way, they made some great connection and put you together with someone, or provided something really valuable to the project, you give them a producer credit as kind of a thank you. They might say, look, I don't want anything for this. I don't expect any pay because it's such a low budget film. I know I'm not going to get paid, but at least give me a producer credit. So sometimes those producer credits are just kind of like handed out, like, you get to be a producer, you get to be a producer. They throw them all over the place. It really depends on the project.
They make great Kickstarter perks as well. Right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right, cool. So we're going to get back to you in a second. Let's go to Julie. And Julie, I know you produce, you direct and write and do all sorts of things, but I don't know, I see you as an editor for the most part, because I guess when I first met you, that's what I saw you as. But what kind of relationship does an editor have with a director before, during, and after the shoot?
Well, I think that really depends on the project. For me, in many of the cases, I might have been producing, directing, and editing, which was, a dream in the sense that I knew what we were shooting. I had control over where we were going, and, talent being hired, casting, all of that. But that's kind of the choice of the relationship between the director and the editor, what they choose. I've done a lot of research too, because there were many times I was like, I need to be on set. I need to see what's being filmed so that I could, because I know when I got it for the most part, it's just in my head, I can see things editing. But at the same time, I've read about some other editors who absolutely do not want to be on set because it taints what they're seeing. It's really cool being on set. I love it. There are so many neat relationships. If I'm not producing and directing, then I might be there as a client in my days at Charter. And so you get to, talk with the talent, you get to talk with the crew, you get to, mingle with everybody. but it does give you preconceived notions like, oh, that was such a good take. She had such a good smile. But is that what you need? Do you need a smiley take? What do you need? So there's different schools of thought on that because it depends on what the project requires. What does that scene require? So I'm not sure right now if I would want to be on set or not be on set. It depends on what the project is.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later too about dealing with specifically with the director. But Brian, I wanted to ask you, welcome again. As a writer, how much input do you have during production and post with the director?
Well, for me, it's theoretical because I am still waiting to be produced. I've had a couple of scripts. I've written, as you mentioned in your intro, I did write a screenplay for Al Pacino, which would have been great if it had gotten made, but certain factors came into play, namely the producer, who will go nameless here, who is a financer that at the end of the day didn't have the financing, or I think that's basically what it was. He was kind of pulling a Ponzi scheme on everybody. And so it got to the point where, unfortunately, Pacino didn't even read my script at the time. His agent said, look, there's no way, which had nothing to do with me or the script. It had to do with the investor who was supposed to be footing the bill. So yeah, it's still, it's not there yet, but I'm working with a director now who is based in Ireland, and he is looking to do the current version of the script that I'm now working on with him, developing, which he had optioned back in 2005. So just to give the people tuning in an idea of how long this process can take, it can take a while. And so I'm hoping, this will be the one that actually gets financed and gets produced. And I've got a close relationship with Tom, the director / producer, and I see that continuing into production and into post, at least into production.
So really, you can be the most wonderful screenwriter in the world and never have your film made because there's so many things that can happen to your script along the way, whether it gets optioned and thrown on a shelf or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. There are a lot of hurdles to overcome to actually get your script made. I think the best way to get your script made is to do it independently, is to do it with people who you trust. I mean, I'm so impressed by someone like Barry Jenkins, who basically got his film school friends together and did a little film called Moonlight. And if we could all make films like that, I'd be interested to hear what Tony thinks about working at that level. But to me, that's the ideal way to work. The challenge is getting financing, but I think the advantage is that the artistic integrity tends to be more coherent, and it's more likely for a screenwriter to see his or her vision of the script realized on an independent level. The larger a production gets, the more Hollywood it gets, even though that's all changing now with streaming and whatnot. But in terms of the studio system, the screenwriter is often one of the first people to go. And there are many horror stories of screenwriters that have been, thrown under the bus. Maybe the script is optioned, maybe it's even bought. And stories of scripts that are bought for large amounts of money and never see the light of day for various reasons. Or a screenwriter who's bumped from the project, who's, essentially paid off to not be involved for any number of reasons. So that's less likely to happen with an independent film. Hopefully that sheds some light on the.
So just one more little question. You can, depending on your deal, sell your film. They can change the name, which happened to me, and actually change the whole gist of the script, and you can do nothing about it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if your script is optioned, you, the screenwriter, still own the copyright to that script. It's an important distinction to make. So you're working with a producer for a period of time, usually a year, can be more, can be less, but let's say a year. So for that year time, that producer pays you some money. Hopefully, you're not going to get rich, but reasonable, modest amount of money. And it's like they're basically leasing your script to try to get the financing, to get the money together to actually produce it. But during that period of time, during the option period, you as a screenwriter own the rights to your work. If you sell the script, you are selling it. It's like selling a car or selling a house. And once it's sold, they can do whatever they want. And I guess, Victoria, you've been through that process.
Yeah, I own 49%. That's the issue, even though I wrote it.
Okay, well,
I was paid up front. So
yeah, it's like take the money and run and hope that at the end of the day, you've got, I tell my students, it comes down to really two things, credit and money. And, what part of that equation do you want? Obviously, we want both. But to negotiate the best deal that you possibly can. So yeah, it's once your script is sold, it's whoever has bought it, they can pretty much do with it what they will. And then rights, screenwriting credit is often arbitrated by the Writers Guild at that point. A lot of emphasis is put on the original writer and his or her contribution, but if a script is rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, that contribution can become, and often does become, less and less. So yeah.
You'll end up with story by credit instead of written by.
Yes, yeah, exactly, precisely.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Brian.
Sure.
Tony, why should a filmmaker contact the Film Commission other than applying for permits?
Sure. Well, if you're going to be shooting anything in an area that you're, whether you're traveling into the area to shoot something or you already, live in that particular area, there's a lot of things that the Film Commission will help you out with. One that most people think of is permits. If you want to shoot, downtown St. Pete, or you want to shoot on Clearwater Beach or any road or anything like that, you have to get a permit to be able to do that. And, one of the questions, I know a lot of people will just be like, oh, permits are such a hassle and it's going to cost me money and I'm just going to skip it. Permits are free. And, the only thing you have to have is insurance. And there are companies out there that are online based. Thimble is one that's business insurance. You can literally get $1 million liability policy for $25 a day for a shoot. So there's no excuse not to have insurance and then get a proper permit. One of the things I always tell people is if you want to be a professional filmmaker, act like a professional filmmaker, and professionals get permits. So beyond the permitting aspect of it, do you need help with the locations? I'm looking for, a secluded cove to shoot this particular scene, or I need a warehouse, or I need a business, or whatever it might be. We've got a location database of over 10,000 images on our website, cataloged by location. And so we'll help you with locations. You need crew. There's a production guide on our website where you can literally go and I need a gaffer, a grip, an editor, a DP, a PA, with plenty of options for all those different crew and support services. So, there's a wide variety of things. There's, of course, our incentive program. If you're shooting feature film and, whatever you spend in the area, you can get 10% back as a cash rebate for shooting the project in the area. So, we're really there as sort of a one-stop shop to help you kind of put everything together. Now, some of the things we do not do, we do not find money for your movie. That is your job, to find your own money for the movie. We do not produce the movies for you either. Again, that's also your job. I get a lot of phone calls. I've got a great idea, or I've got a great script. Can you help me make this movie? No, but I get that so many times. We actually did a workshop on it and have a video on our website and on our YouTube channel that's like 30 minutes long, explaining, if you've got a great idea or a script, how to get your movie made, because we do get that question so often.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you. That's very informative. Julie, how much creative input should an editor have? What if your thoughts are in conflict with the director? How do you approach the director, and when do you hold back?
I think the editor should have all kinds of creative input. That really depends on the relationship with the director. You know, how many times have you worked with that director? If it's a first time, I would imagine you kind of have to step back, get to know one another. Have you been invited on set? Are you supposed to be seeing what's going on? Have you sat with them during the dailies to see what they're thinking? Usually you get the dailies and you do, you know, some assemblies to make sure things are starting to cut. And sometimes if Rich was here, he would tell you that they'll even do that on set just to make sure that it is working. But the tough part of that, like I said, it depends on your relationship. But one of the reasons you hire certain editors is because of their experience, their knowledge, and what they bring to the table. So hopefully there's some sort of mutual respect. But there's a diplomatic way to approach things. Again, depending on your relationship, you might say, that sucks, you know, or you might say, you know, no, I appreciate what you're saying there. You know, I'll give that a try and we'll do an alternative version, or, you know, and sometimes the director's sitting there breathing down your neck the whole time. Sometimes they leave and you get to play around with it and you do their version, you do your version, and you get to present the options. You always do their version, and then you decide, you know, maybe this, if we fudge this a little bit here, or, you know, tweak it a little bit. What if we rearrange the scenes? Hopefully they'll be receptive to that. But it's a tightrope walk sometimes. Diplomacy and mind reading.
And the relationship, as you said, because you feel more free to say something to somebody you've worked on 3 films with than you would somebody you just started with. So excellent. Very, very good. Brian, how do you write screenplays that reach a global audience? I know that's your specialty.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, that's I think the goal we all have, whether we're writing an, you know, independent, low budget script or you know, the next DC blockbuster. I mean, to me, the exciting thing is that, I mean, film has always been global. It's always been universal, but in terms of accessibility, and I think also in terms of audience awareness, I think we're, you know, we're living in a pretty special time. I mean, the fact that Parasite won Best Picture last year, it's hard to believe it's already last year. You know, the first non-English speaking film to win Best Picture. You know, I think there's a hunger and an interest in audiences here and around the world. And I mean, that's one of the great things that film festivals can provide. So yeah, I mean, I've just always been fascinated at the global language of cinema, and whatever story I'm writing, whether it's a thriller that actually I finished, which happens to be set in Florida. So Tony, I may want to talk to you at some point. You know, or the historical drama I've been pounding away at for years, which is set in the 11th century in France and England. I try to find a commonality in that universality, if that makes any sense at all. But sure, the goal is to reach as large an audience as possible. You know, find that common language.
Okay, thanks. Tony, you're the king of distribution, speaking of that, and resources and info. What is the best way to get distribution?
Oh, well, that's a tricky
long
question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the king, but so, you know, it's interesting. It depends on the project. So I'll run through a couple of scenarios. You know, if you've put together, and, you know, I kind of have to kind of think, what is our audience that we're talking to right now? And so independent filmmakers making smaller films, probably sub $1 million, probably sub $200,000 kind of thing. So, you know, if you're making
sub $1,000.
yeah. But if you're making a feature film that's, you know, that's $1 million or something like that, and you're going to have some recognizable cast and things like that in it, you get a sales agent, and they sell the movie, and it is what it is, you know. So, but when you're talking about a smaller film, it really depends on, and this is something you need to figure out before you even make the film, is what is the goal of the film? Are you making the movie because you want to make money, or are you making the movie as a business card, basically? And I would say that the majority of small films, you know, $100,000 or movies you're making with your friends, or you're just trying to get this feature made. You have this great idea. You don't have any resources, but you've somehow come together and made this film, and, you know, for whatever you can make it for, those are business card movies, you know, and whoever's putting money into the film, whether you've crowdfunded it or you've got investors or an uncle who just had some money he wanted to pull out of his 401k for some reason, you know, be upfront with them that they're not going to get their money back. Because the realities of the distribution world are that you're just, you know, for small films like that, you don't make any money. And the reason being, I'll run through, and if I start rambling on too long or I bore you, you know, cut me off and move on to the next question.
I'm sure the audience is going to find this very useful.
Yeah. You know, the reason being is when you're selling your film, you know, it costs money. So you've got to get, if you don't have those connections yourself to be able to call up the buyers for the international territories around the world that are going to get your movie, you have to get a sales agent to do that for you. So let's say you've made this $15,000 horror movie. Great. So you find a sales agent who will take your movie on and sell it. And the way they make money is they get, you know, anywhere from 15 to 25% of whatever they sell right off the top. Plus they'll charge, you know, let's say for a small film like that, a $5,000 marketing fee, because they've got to put materials together to be able to sell the film. They are going to be traveling in a normal year to, you know, Cannes Film Festival, American Film Market in LA, maybe Toronto, maybe Berlin. You know, there's work involved on their part. And so they've got to get paid for their work. So they're going to get their fees up front, and they're going to get their percentage for whatever it is. And the way distribution works is there's, you know, all these international territories around the world. And then there's, you know, what they call the domestic territory, which is US, Canada, essentially. And, you know, they'll say that here's my horror movie, and I got an offer from Germany for $5,000, and you get an offer for Turkey for $1,000, and Italy is going to give you $3,000 for your film, and I'm going to get $2,000 with the UK. And that's how you make your money, is you're piecing together all of these licensing deals, where in Germany, say, they've got the rights now for 7 years to distribute that film in whatever formats they want. And then that buyer has to take, and they're making money off it, but they're giving you, you know, this minimum guaranteed amount up front. So you have to piece together all of these, you know, sales offers, and you don't get paid on that until you're able to deliver the movie to them. And so delivering the movie, let's say you've made your $15,000 movie. Well, did you get the entire film transcribed? Do you have separate audio and mix and effects tracks? Do you have, you know, you don't just hand over a video file. Here's my movie gets distributed, you know, because it's going to have to be subtitled in all these different countries. So there's, you know, a list of 25 or 30 technical deliverable things that you have to hand over, and it has to pass QC, which is known as, you know, like a quality check or quality control. So they actually run your film through a lab, and if there are audio glitches, light level glitches where it's too bright, it's too dark, the black levels aren't good enough, and it fails those things, that means those distributors, those buyers don't take it, and it doesn't get distributed, and you've got to fix that yourself. So that's why I say, you know, it depends on what level, you know, you're at. And you could spend $15,000 making your movie, and it might cost you $100,000 just to deliver it. And so where are you going to get that money? So in a lot of scenarios like that, with these small movies, it just makes more sense to distribute it yourself. You can put it on, you know, Amazon Prime Video it doesn't cost you anything, and then charge what you want to charge. You put it on Vimeo, and you can have a paywall platform on Vimeo where you can charge people to buy it. You can go through a aggregator where you can get it on iTunes and Google Play and all these different things, and have it for sale, and then people will buy it, and you're the one who's collecting the revenue from that. But the big thing is you have to then be good at social media to market your film, to let people know that it exists, so people will watch it. So I mean, it's really a much longer conversation.
So you provide the Film Commission provides information and even workshops on this subject. Is that correct?
We've done multiple workshops about this. So if you go to the Film Commission, St. Pete Clearwater Film Commission YouTube channel, you're going to see 30, 45-minute workshops talking about this, going into detail, breaking it down. And those are hosted on our website as well, under the resources page, where you'll see different items there. So it's a long, complicated process, but if your goal is to make money on it, that's something completely different. If you have to get your money to your investors back, then there are a lot of factors that have to go into it to make sure you get proper distribution to get the money back, to pay your investors back. And if you are taking money from an investor, your number one priority, of course, is to make a good movie, but your number one priority is to pay your investors back, period. That's what should be your focus. And if that's not your focus, then don't take their money.
Because it's a small community, and if you don't pay them back, word gets out.
Yeah, and if somebody's a first-time investor, they're a doctor and they just want to be in the movie business, it's great. I'm going to make this movie. I met this guy, and he got this cool script, and we're going to make this movie. And you make this movie, it doesn't make any money. He'll never invest in a film again. So you've just eliminated somebody who could be supporting independent film and investing in independent films because you didn't do the business side of the film business properly, and you lost that person's money.
Thank you.
It's my little soapbox moment.
I love it. Julie, you covered this a little bit, but let's get into a little bit more. How can an editor expand the goals of a director while staying within the director's intent, i.e. timing, choice of cuts, angles, and use of audio in conjunction with video? And also, can you rescue the film from production errors?
What? Say that again?
All right, we'll take it in pieces.
No, go ahead. Just say that.
How can an editor expand the goals of the director while staying within the director's intent, i.e. timing, choice of cuts, angles, and use of audio in conjunction with video? Can you rescue the film from production errors? That's two different questions, really. But what are all the bells and whistles you can do to make a film better that even expands the goal of the director?
Well, I'm going to go to what my thoughts would be is instinct. So when I take on a project, I go by my instincts as I'm sitting there to edit if I don't have the director with me. So it sounds like you're asking if you don't have what you need, because I've never been one to do effects for the sake of doing effects, trying to spruce something up. Mm-hmm. But I think how you time something, having good instincts of knowing when to cut, when to stay, when music is needed, when it, maybe like some sound effects. I wish I had you see the teaser I just played during the edit session a little while ago. And that actually has been a different working relationship than I've had, which has been wonderful. You mentioned the film I'm working on is Forgotten, The Pulse Survivors. A very new experience for me, and it's been amazing working with the director and producer. I basically was brought in and just handed footage and said, take a look at this. And before we had much chance to, really sit down and talk, I was able to cut together stories of what I thought would work. And it just instinct. It's just, I could tell what they were thinking when they were asking the questions. I could tell what they were trying to get. I could tell what the person needed to say. And
what the audience needed to hear as well.
And that's the other thing is being able to put yourself in place of, and this kind of goes back to something Tony said as well. Know your audience. Who's going to be watching? Who are you targeting? What is the purpose of the project that you're working on? And, in this case, it's to make people aware of something. Most people have heard of like the Pulse tragedy, sadly that it took place, but there's these other people that have been forgotten. And that's the purpose of this, is to bring their stories to light, not to rehash everything everybody knows. And for me, as an editor, what I did was I did a lot of research. I went out there and I'm like Googling everything I could find about the Pulse tragedy. And Let me tell you, that was pretty grueling. That's another side thing that, I think editors need to take care in, is make sure that they're not getting overwhelmed with the subject matter if you're working on a documentary, for example. But I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yes, you did. And the other piece of it was, I know myself working with editors, I've had a nightmare, like maybe a pixel is missing or something happened, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And they know how to fix it. I mean, we just do this, that, and the other, and take care of it. And it's like amazing, that relationship.
Well, and one of my goals would be to know whatever it is you're going to see as the director. I need to know it before you see it. You shouldn't tell me that there's an issue. I should be able to tell you that, hey, there's this missing thing here, and I'll fix that. Don't you worry about it. And then we play, if it's something that I wasn't able to fix before you came in for a viewing, say, because, deadlines always factor in.
Right.
But
cool.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much. Okay, Brian, what do you recommend to writers after completing the first draft? At that outing in Belize, we had several writing teachers that worked with us. And I remember the teacher that I had said the first thing you do is reach back here and pat yourself on the back and then leave it. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, the back patting is good. Celebrate, have a glass of wine, a beer, it's probably good to set it aside and realize that your first draft is not your last draft. I was working with a student who's become a friend, and very intense guy. I mean, great guy. He's a retired NYPD detective, and just brought this intensity to his work. And he wrote a very good first draft, but he was such a perfectionist. He wanted everything to be absolutely perfect. And I understand that, because I'm kind of the same way. And I would say, Ken, it's a first draft. It's a process. And a few years later, he would come back to me and he's like, man, you were right. It is a process. And so, I pat yourself on the back, have that celebratory drink, take a break, and then come back to it. And I guarantee you'll see it with fresh eyes, whether that break is a week or a month. But do come back to it and, see what needs work, what needs improving, and be honest with yourself, and also get feedback from friends. It's sort of a cliche, don't ask you can ask your mother or your aunt or family relatives, but ideally people that are fellow screenwriters, that are industry people. I mean, you can pay for coverage. There are good coverage services out there that are modestly priced. And anytime I would write a draft, my director would go and come back with coverage. And so when he had optioned the script way back and was doing this, it got a little annoying after a while. But you'll always take something from it. You may not agree with it all the time, but take what you think is valid. And generally there's going to be a consistency. If 5 people say this scene sucks, then it probably sucks. Or if like, I love this, maybe you want to reconsider that. So just try to be humble, have an open mind, and realize that it's a process. I don't know if we're going to have the Olympics this year, but whenever the Olympics rolls around every 4 years, I'm always just thinking about the years of work and dedication to the craft, whatever that sport is, that athlete has dedicated their life to. And, I look at our craft in a similar way, whether it's directing, editing, writing, and, it's cool to say, hey, I just want to write a script, see if I can do it. But if you're serious about writing a script that you think you either want to try to realize yourself with a director, or direct yourself, or get it to that level where someone else will option or buy it. You know, it's a tough business. We've heard that before, but you know, to have a shot, you know, you have to write something that's not just good, but really stands out. And of course, that's true with, you know, filmmaking across the board. So yeah, so enjoy and be ready to sit down and start
draft two.
Draft two. Yep.
I love it. Thank you.
Yep.
Tony, talk to us a little bit about your personal path. Do you feel film school is important, or do you think DIY is just as good for some people?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, for myself personally, I didn't get my MFA until I was really already a working professional in the industry. You know, I started making Super 8, you know, films in the mid 80s in high school, taking a high school filmmaking class. And then really, you know, had a career in business for a while before I finally decided in my early 30s to jump into filmmaking like a fool. And that was really literally started making some short films, and then with some friends just said, you know what, why do we keep making these short films? Let's just make a feature movie. How hard can it be, right? If we're going to make these shorts. And so I didn't know how to make a feature, and got a book, figured out how to produce, went through the process, made the movie. You know, it was a feature movie that we made for $6,000 with a cast of 80 people. You know, and it was crazy. But as soon as you're done with it, you're like, oh, okay, can we do that whole thing over again? Because now I know what I would do from doing that. And I think so much of it comes from experience. I learned to edit just by buying like version 1.0 of Premiere Pro software back in 2002 or something, and you just start learning it. And I'm a big proponent of just doing to learn. Now there's obviously, depending on whatever your skill is, there's technical knowledge in there. I think that from a writing perspective, people can definitely benefit from learning how to properly write a screenplay. So much of it is formatting and getting the formatting correct, and knowing story structure for a screenplay is so important. And so even though I'd been in the industry and working as a professional in the industry and already hired as the film commissioner, when I was finishing up my MFA, it still helped me considerably to do that. But it just depends on how old you are, what your appetite is for going back to school, how much time do you have. The one great thing about film school, and you hear a lot of people say this that have gone to film school, is it's about the other students and the connections that you'll make, because sometimes you'll end up working with those students then for the rest of your career, basically. So it really depends, you know, on the individual. But I definitely, you know, started in the do-it-yourself format and learning as you go and learning by doing, and then, you know, did an MFA later on, which was still really great and helpful, and I got a lot out of that too.
Thank you.
I don't know how well that answered the question, but you know.
Yeah, it did. I think both are important, and maybe one is more important for some individuals where the other is more important for others. Mm-hmm. And a little mix of both never hurts. Julie, what advice would you give to women filmmakers, both starting out and who are already midway and want to go the rest of the way?
Can I answer his question? Because I didn't go to film school, just real quick. But I had years and years of learning in the job. And my job was different. I wasn't necessarily making short films, but they were. Commercials are short films. You have to be able to get an audience engaged and keep them. And
really short films.
Yeah. And I was saying, I've always tweeted, they just happen to be commercials.
There's a lot of huge directors who got their start in commercials, going back to Michael Bay and Michael Mann and all those guys.
Ridley Scott.
And they continue to do that to fund their passion projects. But as far as getting women involved, I think you just got to do it. You just got to get out there. What I was trying to say earlier, I'm not sure if I got it across in my edit session, but I was never a joiner. I never, even like with Facebook, I didn't want to, join groups and things like that. But I think putting yourself out there, meeting people. I had gone to an editor's retreat where I met like-minded people, which is, editors tend to sit in a dark room and, used to having people talk to the back of our heads because that back in the day, they sat behind you, not next to you. And it was just an amazing experience. And those are people that I still reach out to. And then attending conferences, especially now that we're in this COVID age where everything's virtual, and so many things that maybe you couldn't have afforded to go out to California to an Adobe summit or something, or an ACE Global Fest, I think it is, Global Edit Fest, that you can join for like $35. And now you're having these amazing seminars like what St. Pete Clearwater has been putting on as well. And so through some of these organizations and reaching out and following Facebook groups who, there's so many problems that can occur in edit or in filmmaking, in distribution, as Tony's pointed out, that there are groups for all of these different things. And while you can't belong to everything, but when I check my feed, I'm getting all kinds of information, of either problems that somebody's encountered with trying to get their film sold, or, this thing happened to me in edit and I don't know what to do. I have all these different frame rates. How do I bring them together and, make them the proper frame rate for what I need to distribute? So I think building that network, and that is in fact how I met you, Victoria. Then you introduced me to Alexa, who I didn't meet again until accidentally on, I actually, through Women in Film, I got on early on a session while we're waiting for it to start. And Nancy happened to be saying that, I'm working on this project, I just need an editor. And I'm like, hello, right here. And then it came full circle where when I was told who the director was, and I'm like, I met an Alexa last year. Or
at Dunedin, as a matter of fact, right?
What's that?
You met her at Dunedin Film Festival, right?
Yes, I did. Right. Yes, You're exactly right.
Over drinks and food.
Yeah.
I remember.
So anyway, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I would say put yourself out there. I personally would never say that, yes, I can do that if I didn't think I could do it. So don't overextend, but sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone and try things that you may not have tried before.
Figure it out.
What's that?
Definitely. You have to figure it out.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Brian, somebody has completed a script. What should they do next?
Sell it. So yeah, there are, it's a good question and it's a common one. I would, well, and of course the other question is how do you get an agent? But really, I think the best thing to do is just to kind of follow up on what Julie said, is put yourself out there. And one way to do that is to submit your script to competitions, film festivals. There are an amazing number of festivals and screenwriting competitions out there now. Or maybe I've just become more aware of them. There's a really good resource called Coverfly, which basically tracks, it's a tracking service, but it also provides very detailed information, similar to Film Freeway. There's some degree of overlap, but Coverfly is really more specifically aimed towards screenwriters. And they list upcoming competitions, film festivals, dates, entry fees, sometimes the jurors that are going to be looking at scripts. I would, just be selective, but choose competitions that you think might be a match for you, just as you would as a filmmaker. And you start placing and tracking highly, getting good scores from jurors, possibly becoming a semi-finalist or even a finalist. And you'll start to get noticed. Your work will start to get noticed, and you build those connections by doing that. So I would highly recommend that. And just put yourself out there, and but be selective in the way that you do it. There are charlatans out there. I think we've all probably had that experience. And so just, be smart about it. But it's important to, once you've done the work, you got to get it out there into the world.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. What are some indie projects in the works within the Dunedin area? I don't know if
I can answer that.
Okay.
There is there's a Hallmark style romantic film that theoretically will be shot in March. There was actually an article that came out in the Tampa Bay Times today that that kind of went over this enhanced incentive program that the Film Commission is doing for this particular project. And if all goes well, we'll be shooting in March. It's called A Taste of Love, and it's, Hallmark style film, and that would be shooting quite a bit in Dunedin. More to come on that one.
So Tony, where can people sign up to get a feed of what's going on and what some of these productions?
If you just follow the Film Commission on Facebook, basically anytime there's something happening, whether it's a crew call, casting call, or whatever, we posted, always posted on there with all the information, whether it's extras or whatever it might be.
Okay.
So St. Pete Clearwater Film Commission Facebook page, really.
Excellent. Now we've got another one. How can I volunteer for the Film Commission?
We don't really do volunteers. We're part of Pinellas County government. So if you want to volunteer for Pinellas County government, Pinellas County has an entire volunteer program, and we're housed under the tourism office, Visit St. Pete Clearwater. So we just really don't have any volunteer positions, unfortunately. We're just plugging along with the 3 people in our department and kind of good to go. But I would say, if you want to volunteer for something, volunteer for the Dunedin Film Festival, volunteer for the Sunscreen Film Festival, volunteer for Sunshine City Film Festival, really where you're going to make the connections in the industry locally and meet the people that you want to work with are all these different film festivals and stuff that are happening. You see behind me the backdrop for Sunscreen Film Festival, because I founded that festival, and I owe my career to that festival. I met so many people within the industry from all over the world because of working, that festival for 16 years now, basically.
Excellent.
So get out there and volunteer.
That's how Barry Jenkins volunteered at the Telluride Film Festival. He was there for about 19 years before and did an amazing job. And I think that's, making those connections while he was there too.
So sorry. Have a dog in the house. All right.
The dog agrees.
Yes,
Volunteer.
the dog definitely agrees. Venus. Sorry. Also volunteer for productions, because that's where you see and you learn and you meet other people as well. And I'm going to ask another question for Julie, so the dog will stop barking. Julie, feel free to use...
dog stop barking.
Oh, Alexa says, Julie, feel free to use me as an example if you wish.
What kind of an example? I'm sure she'll let us know, but I wanted to point something out, because when you're looking for an editor, there's a lot of different things that I personally don't think that when you look at something, you should be able to tell that it was edited by a woman or by a man. Not that I lose my identity as a woman, but, I've worked in production houses where somebody else may come in, you're the day editor, they're the night editor, or vice versa, and you take over projects. So you need to make sure that it's seamless. But there are also things that, when you have your independent project and you're looking for someone to help you out, maybe you don't have as much budget, I suggest looking for someone, and it's kind of like you would, people interview directors, you want to get the right director for the project. You do a casting call, you want to get the right cast in line for your project. And so when it comes to editing, you want someone who's going to be able to bring your project to light. So what I would suggest is having a dialogue with the person that you want to edit to make sure that they agree, or that they get it. That it's really important to make sure that your editor can connect. Otherwise, they're going to be just a button pusher, and they're only going to do what you tell them to do. And I say that because I see a lot of content. As you mentioned, I screen for the tellies, and I'm a screener for Dunedin. I'm a screener for other film festivals like Sunscreen. Yay! So much content out there. And there are some things that I look at that are just not my taste. It's not me. And I think about that. And just as I'm judging something, that's a whole different thing. But when I sit down as an editor, I know my brain and how my brain can work and can't. And there are certain things that, maybe they're just way out there that are really awesome. But I don't think my brain could do that unless I had someone really steering that ship. And to back up to the film I'm working on now, where we're going to, and I'm going to follow what you said, Brian, was the process where, we've done first cut. We have a really good, solid first cut, I think. And we've taken time. In fact, today when I was preparing for my edit session, I exported our teaser, and I was like, ooh, I was in love with it before, and now it's like, oh, maybe I can tweak this here, and, just what can I do to refresh it? Because, when you've been glued to something for so long, you get so used to it and it makes so much sense to you. But when you, take that step back and look at it again with fresh eyes as to, what the viewer might see, you might decide to change some things. And I did end up doing that with the color on that spot. But anyway, I think that you should have, make sure that you're compatible with your editor. And I feel very lucky to have been so compatible with the producer and director on this other project. So I hope that answers.
I got another little piece of information from Alexa. She said about working with her as a director or producer. She said, feel free to use her as an example, which I think you did earlier a little bit.
Well, I will say that for someone who doesn't know me, who only met me through you, to have entrusted me the way that she has is amazing, because I think that she's been very pleased with what I've done. I think it's been very collaborative. We're about to go in for a review of what do we need to change now. And for me, whether I'm producing, directing, or editing, I said I like to be on set because I like to see how other directors work. I like to be a part of that process, if not as an editor, just so I can see how other people think. I kind of see myself as a bull in a china shop. I'm not the most delicate person, and I would much rather have someone else deal with the talent, and I'll tell you what I need. And much of my past 18 years has been the client side of things, where I go through the production company and speak with the producer who speaks with the director, and have them work with the talent. But it's refreshing to have a director and producer who so completely trust you.
Very good. We have another question for Brian. Brian, what inspires you? I guess to write is what they're talking about.
I mean, great stories. This weird thing we call life. I mean, it can come from a person. It could come from an event. I'll tell you the film. This is going to date me, but what the hell? Going to see 2001: A Space Odyssey with my father, the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California. remember coming out of that as a boy and thinking, my God, you know, I had never seen anything like it. I don't think I've seen anything like it since, but I think that probably planted a seed in me in terms of what, up until that point, it just been movies and entertainment, and all of which is fine. But that inspired me in ways I don't think I was even really consciously aware of, other than that was really cool. I don't know what I just saw, but that was just kind of remarkable. So yeah, I try to, I mean, and sometimes it comes from places that, you know, we don't expect. So I try to keep an open mind, and I try to absorb inspiration and find that thing that, yeah, that would make a good story. That would be, you know, I can't really pinpoint what that is or why it is, but it's that magic that, you know, as a creative person, as a writer, you know, I try to grasp that and find it, and then, you know, kind of reel it in and say, okay, what can I do with that? How can I, you know, make that something that would be my vision, and hopefully something someone else would be interested in actually making. So,
do you ever get inspired by the characters themselves? I know when I write, sometimes the characters start taking the story without me somehow, and it's a great thing, but it's a strange thing. I saw Aaron Sorkin speak at Toronto International Film Festival a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how he was doing an angry scene, and he got up in the mirror and he was like talking in the mirror and punching at the mirror, and he got so excited he broke the mirror, you know. So I thought that was great. I love it.
Yeah.
So we've got, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's, I probably have to do more of that, not breaking mirrors, but, you know, letting the characters go their way, because it's that balance between structure. Tony had talked about the importance of structure and formatting, and I guess I tend to be a structuralist, to the point where I think in the past, maybe my scripts have been a little too rigid, a little too structured, and learning. I had a writing partner actually on this historical project going way back, and he used the expression "pushing the boat out." You know, we should put English. We should push the boat out more, Brian. And so I remind myself of that, pushing that boat out, and needing to do that, and maybe let go of some of the structure, or just kind of, you know, let it flow. Annette Insdorf, when she was teaching at Columbia, she may still be teaching at Columbia, but when I took her French cinema class, and she said she loves world cinema, but she loves French cinema in particular. And I loved the way her analogy, which is like a glass of wine that spills over a little. You know, it's nice to have that wine spill over the top and maybe make a little bit of a mess, and you know, that's kind of what film should be. And so I try to look for that more now in my characters, and as you say, you know, maybe let them take me in directions I didn't know they were going to take me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions. Best ways to network in the business, and anybody who wants to grab that one can grab it.
Kind of like we already mentioned, go to film festivals when we can. You know, I know not as easy now as it has been in the past, but Dunedin has some live components to the festival. You know, they can still be done in a safe way. Volunteering to be on set, and whether it's as a PA or whatever it might be, so people just get to know you and know how you work. And like Julie said, you've just got to kind of keep putting yourself out there. Networking is not for the shy, and if you are shy, you kind of try to force yourself to not be shy, because it's that old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's right. I'm going to just interject a quick question that I have. What genres are popular today? I know there's, like, for example, Curtis has done some faith-based films, and I know they're really hot right now, as well as horror. Should filmmakers concentrate on the audience instead of the story, or, you know, over the story, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I guess that is in answer to your question of whether you're making films for passion or money, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, kind of a typical thing has been for a lot of first-time filmmakers, and especially Florida filmmakers, love the zombie movies, love making horror movies, you know, because in general, horror movies are, you know, have a built-in audience, and they're always going to get some sort of distribution. So you make a low-budget horror movie, you don't necessarily need big name cast or anything like that. Just make something unique, fun, different horror movie, and you're going to get distribution. Whether you make money or not, you know, that remains to be seen. So, you know, again, there's write what you know. You know, it really depends on just having the best script that you can. But in some scenarios, I'll use the Bernie the Dolphin films for an example. You know, we shot these 2 films in St. Pete, Clearwater. They were both distributed by Lionsgate in the U.S. and internationally in over 100 countries around the world. And those movies were specifically because a distributor said, hey, you know, we're really looking for like a family-friendly kids, dolphins, manatees, something or other. What, you got anything? We're like, no, but we will make something just for you that you will get distributed. And so we came up and, you know, put these projects together to shoot here locally, to be specifically because we knew that's what they wanted. You get anything with kids. People aren't stopping having kids anytime soon. So anytime you make a family movie, you'll get distribution. Christmas movies, make a Christmas movie, you'll always get distribution for your Christmas movie. Horror movies, you know, I guess.
What's your favorite genre? That was one of the questions.
Oh, I'm all over the board. You know, I mean, I like everything from, you know, the Marvel and the Star Wars movies to something like Run Lola Run, which is a German film from 1997, to,
great film,
you know, Mank on Netflix. Anybody's seen Mank on Netflix? That goes into the making of Citizen Kane, you know, and that's a slow, kind of dramatic black and white. I like stuff that's period pieces and film history related. So I really don't have a favorite. I like a little bit of everything. Just make it good, you know, write a good script, make something good.
That's it. So this is for any or all of you. Do you think it's worthwhile to join the Writers, Producers, or Directors Guild? What will that do for you, putting some letters?
I think, again, that depends on where you're at in the industry. Yeah. You know, I mean, to join those guilds, you have to have a certain body of work as well. You can't just be like, you know, I think I'll join the DGA today. You know, there's a whole process for becoming a part of those guilds. Same thing with SAG, you know, same thing with the Producers Guild. Any of them, you have to do something before they let you join. And then once you're, of course, a part of the guilds, you know, now you're in a union, so you're guaranteed a certain rate to be paid if you're going to work on a project. And if you're going to do television, you know, direct TV, you know, you've got to be a part of the DGA, and it just depends.
I think that's all the questions we have.
I have one.
Okay, please.
I have one. I have been wondering with other people, people in the business, people who are just viewers, film watchers, and so addressing filmmakers. Do you feel that with, and even a year or two ago, I would have asked, with Netflix, with Amazon, all these online avenues of getting and watching films, has it changed viewers' expectations and their willingness to go to a film and sit through a film in a theater? And what prompts me to ask that is, I know for me personally, when I watch, let's say, I don't know, Schitt's Creek, that has, you know, roughly 25-minute episodes, it's so much easier to sit down and watch a block of 6 episodes that, you know, takes up 3 hours. But if you tell me there's a 3-hour feature film at a theater, no way, I'm not going to sit through 3 hours. So I just wondered, does that impact anybody else? And for me, like as an editor, thinking of how the difference is when you see an American-made film versus a European film, where in the US, everything's like cut, you know, shot reverse. And then in like Europe, you have this, as a broad statement, you know, more epic wide shots and then slower moving, you know, takes where you let the action take place within the scene rather than just forcing the viewer, okay, now look over here, now look over here, now do this. So does anybody feel like you're having to write differently because of the way the trends are going? As viewers, are you watching differently?
I don't know. Well, you go ahead and talk first, Brian. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you in Schitt's Creek. Yeah, it's such a great show. I think I watched the whole, what is it, 6 seasons twice, and kind of and it's the sort of thing you kind of jump in at any point and said, oh, saw that last week. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll see it again. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's I wonder if it's akin to when MTV came out, and as an editor, Julie, maybe you have a sense of that in terms of the attention span of viewers becoming shorter, and how literally the brain, started to be rewired, I think, because of the viewing patterns and because of the cutting and the rapid pace and the need to kind of cut to the chase sooner. I mean, because of COVID, I mentioned Parasite, and I think, God, was that the last film I saw in the theater? Yeah, I mean, 2020 was pretty much a wash. It'll be, I don't know what the answer to that is, but it will be interesting to see if it is a long reaching effect, the binge viewing, the streaming, in terms of sitting down in a dark theater for X amount of time, particularly for a longer film. Just from a personal experience, working with this director again, and I just finished, I think it was like the 8th draft of a step outline for the new draft of this script. I'm kind of amazed I'm not absolutely sick of this thing by this point, but what I find is just, as you say, with the editing, you go back and you see something with fresh eyes. I've been seeing this project with fresh eyes for over 15 years. And the fact that I'm seeing it again with fresh eyes, and Tom is seeing it with fresh eyes, and actors that we had imagined for this 15 years ago, are now too old, or have moved on, or become big, or have fallen off the map. And so there's a new generation of actors. So I think of, the writing in terms of, well, what if we were ideally to cast this person for this role? And, how is that going to, I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but actually what I was getting to was the fact that during one of our meetings, our WhatsApp meetings, I just kind of radically said, well, what if we start the story here? And the here point was actually what had previously begun the beginning of Act 3. And Tom said, that's music to my ears. Coming in as late as possible into the story that I thought I knew for so long, which meant throwing out 70% of the backstory that had been in the previous draft of the script. And, saying, God, what did I just say? But, being kind of excited by the prospect of that. Why not? Why not start literally on the eve of this historical battle that changes English history forever, which had been Act 3, and now I'm just moving Act 3 up, and all the ways that one has to reorient the thinking of story and character, and doing it in a dynamic way. So I don't know if I'm answering any questions, but maybe that's in part, yeah, I mean, audiences are different now. Audiences don't have the same kind of patience, maybe, and maybe don't need the same kind of backstory and setup that traditionally they did. So I'll just leave it at that, because I'm going off on some weird tangent, but yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, shoe leather, no shoe leather.
Yeah.
Tony, did you want to continue?
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on, stuff is easy to watch and it's bingeable, and it's like, okay, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get to the theater. I've got 20 minutes of previews, and there's 2 hours of movie, and it's 20 minutes to get home. It's 3 hours instead of 2 hours to watch a 2-hour movie. Now with reserved seats, though, you can cut out that 20 minutes because you got 15, 20 minutes of previews and just show up and get in the theater. So, for some people like myself, I love going to the movies. I've been to the movies. I went and saw Wonder Woman, even though I have HBO Max and could have watched it at home on Christmas night. I went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark special screening in theater. I went and saw Goldfinger. You know, so they have all these classic movies been coming out this summer. Empire Strikes Back, a big classic. I went and saw Die Hard. I was like, Christmas time, we'll go see Die Hard at the theater. You know, I've been going to the theater myself and seeing it because I like the experience. I like getting out of the house, and the theater's open. So for many people, I think it depends on, you know, when they're comfortable, you know, if they just enjoy the experience or they're just watching something because it's easy to watch at home. And when it gets to the point where people still want to get out of the house, you know, what are you going to do on a date night? There's a lot of date night options, but movies are kind of a classic date night. Maybe that's age speaking, you know, that's like a, you know, what us old people do when we want to have a date night is go to the movies, but that's one of my favorites. So.
Julie, you look like something's coming out of your mouth. So let's see.
One of the things for me, when I watch the different things like an episodic that reels you in, and it's maybe it's a dramatic thriller type thing, whodunit, I don't mind being sucked in every time because I'm watching for different reasons, you know, but like each time it's like, oh my gosh, it might have been this person who did it. And then, nope, it wasn't that one because you have another episode. I don't mind being sucked in like that. I don't mind that formula. And it's a formula. And you see it in so many network TV shows. But when I go to a movie and I feel like something is formulaic like that, or it's too predictable or too something or other, it bothers me at the theater when that happens. And something where, you know, we all know I'm a little bit of a freak, for those of you who know me. But I don't like to know what I'm about to see in the theater. I don't want to know too much about it. And that's one of the beauties for me, like with film festivals and doing all the screening that I'm doing, is that I get to see things blind. So I don't have anybody for me, you know, telling me what to think about this, telling me that, oh, it's going to have this great actor. Oh, it's going to have this great thing here. I just get to see it, form my opinion, and then, wow, you know, or kind of response. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And that's where it made me think too, Brian, like with reformatting how you know, structure something that, you know, you have your certain acts. I'm not going to pretend to know how to do what you do, but does that change any of your writing techniques?
Yeah. It's, I mean, it certainly did in the last month and a half with this project. And I was almost going to jump in when you were talking about editing and seeing things differently. And I mean, as a screenwriter, we're editing as well. And even when you think you know a story, which I thought I knew, and have all these pieces, and, you know, I just, I've lost track of how many drafts of this thing I've written, and go back and said, oh yeah, I wrote a scene with that character way back whenever, and I kind of forgot about that. And but it does get reinvented, and it's still finally the same story with the same characters with the same end result. But what's been exciting, I guess, about this current process is we're taking more of a Rashomon approach to it, where we're showing it from different points of view, and where I'm showing it, I'm the one writing it. When I say we, I mean just the developmental collaboration with Tom. And one of the things that I've struggled with is how, you know, the challenge is, how is it relevant? How is something that took place 956 years ago relevant today? And there are themes that have come up, but alternate reality, you know, fake news. I mean, suddenly things that we've all been living through in the last few years, thinking, well, actually, yeah, if we're taking different points of view, I mean, finally, what is history? But, you know, someone's recording of what they say happened. And so I guess that's part of where the excitement comes, is in looking at the story with a fresh perspective and a new way of, and, you know, maybe a more relevant way of approaching it, and these characters, and, you know, how do we know that that's in fact what happened? You know, when this sacred oath was given that ended up resulting in these things happening, and, you know, changing the outcome of England in the year 1066. So I guess it's just, yeah, it's and amidst all that, editing these puzzle pieces that are scenes, and, you know, trying to come up with a the best variation of those scenes structurally and dramatically and narratively as I can. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that's, yeah. But I feel like an editor and have felt as much like an editor as a writer in the last month and a half during this process. So yeah, it's good.
Very cool. Well, Cameron Campbell, the director of the film festival, just sent a little note saying, thank you all so much. The work you do is amazing. And I think so too. I know we know how to get a hold of Tony. I don't know if either one of you wants to give a website or any other information if somebody has questions after the Zoom. If you do, feel free to give it to us.
Put my email up there.
It's J like John, B like boy, Chalhoub, CHALHOUB 1 @gmail.com.
And I'll just say mine.
Okay.
Story to screenplay. Story, STORY, TO screenplay, all one word @gmail.com.
That's an easy one.
Yep.
Thank you all. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Julie. It's been a wealth of information.
Great.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.